Good morning, this is Angela with Parkos Permaculture. Gorgeous August morning. Totally in love with Portland this time of year. Today I wanted to talk about an issue that has come up over and over again as long as I've been involved in permaculture, which is more than 20 years. But lately it is something that has been brought up in a number of gardening groups and regenerative agriculture groups and permaculture groups. And I wanted to kind of broach the subject. It's something that is much more complex, and I can't even begin to talk about or understand all of the issues at play, but I think it's something that is good to bring to the forefront of our consciousness and to really think about what it means to be a sustainable gardener or a permaculturist or somebody looking and striving for sustainable living. And that is the issue of access to land. Now, I own my own home, but I live in a very expensive part of the world in terms of real estate. Very expensive. We have 6 people in our family, and my husband is a public school teacher, and I work part-time while I unschool them, my kids. So we have a pretty limited income. We are very lucky in that we have a land trust home. So we own our home and we have a 99-year lease on the land, and our heirs can renew that lease forever. And land trusts are a way that you can keep agricultural land from being developed into housing, suburban housing, in order to make farmland more affordable and preserve farmland or ranch land. But there are also urban land trusts, and they aim to keep housing affordable. So because we only have a mortgage on the cost of the home and not the property, it made this property more affordable for us. Now, there are a lot of requirements that come with that. You are a steward of the land here. But that is a method of land access that I hope will become more and more common. It works really well if you plan on owning your home and not moving, and really sinking down deep roots. So I think that land trust home ownership and farm ownership is something that should be more accessible and should really appeal to permaculturists, because permaculture is permanent agriculture. But what about access to land for other people? There is no way we could have afforded to purchase a home in Portland without a land trust. So we would have had to look elsewhere. We wouldn't be living here. What about other people and access to land? And do you need access to land to be a permaculturist? So I think that there's a big misconception that you have to own acreage and that you have to be a farmer to be a permaculturist, or that if you don't own enough land to produce all of your own food, you aren't being sustainable and you aren't being a real permaculturist. But you can live in an apartment in the city, you can live in suburbia, you can live in an urban lot and have, bees on your apartment building roof and, grow a plot in the community garden. You can live in the country and have vast acreage of farming or ranch land, of silvopasture, of food forests. All of those are legitimate ways to do permaculture. You can live in an eco-village. I think that when people talk about land access, there are 2 kind of key issues that come up. One is not everybody has access to land because of financial constraints, because of political constraints, because of health constraints or physical issues that they have. They might not be able to own or work a broad swath of land. There are also obviously issues of systemic oppression and people groups that have had their land taken away from them by governments or by corporations, right? There's a lot of removal of land from people because of desperation or economic oppression and depression that corporations have come in and bought property for pennies on the dollar. And then whole communities have lost access to their traditional landscapes, right? It may just not be in your lifestyle or your interest to want to own and take care of a significant portion of property. I mean, I spend 15 hours a week in the garden. Not everybody has the time or the desire or the physical ability to do that. I have 1/4 acre. If I had 5 acres, I would be spending even more time out in the garden, right? So there is not everybody has access to land, to owning land or even renting land, discrimination, life circumstances, the conditions of the places in which you live can all, and many other factors, I'm not going to give an exhaustive list here, can limit how much access we have to working the land, particularly for renters, because when we talk about permaculture and we're talking about permanent agriculture, I know myself as a renter, when I've been a renter in the past, I've put in annual veggie gardens and I just can't invest in putting in perennials that my landlord will likely rip out when I leave, right? So it's really hard for renters to want to invest in permanent agriculture. But I don't think that means that you're not a permaculturist. The second issue that I see really creeping up is the fact that people have kind of a frenetic, urgent need to be self-sufficient when they get into permaculture. I think that's because preppers and homesteaders and sustainable living folks are really drawn to permaculture, and that's awesome. There's a ton of overlap and it should be there, and I think that's really healthy. But in permaculture, we aren't looking for self-sufficiency. We aren't looking for being an isolated unit. So in permaculture, we talk about having a closed system where you're able to produce and recycle and reuse everything within your own system. And that way it's sustainable, right? I'm not having to import material. I'm not having to ship my waste out. And because of that concept, people tend to think that permaculture requires you to be self-sufficient. So I think that people also can come to it with, so again, that prepper mindset of what if a society collapses? A lot of people in permaculture really are in sort of a peak oil or we're going to see the globalization of our economy kind of collapse, and looking at being self-sufficient because of that, because resources will be hard to come by. And that's all really well and good to an extent, because I don't think that that's what permaculture is about. I don't think that permaculture is about being able to exist and sustain yourself completely independent of all other people. Because permaculture has 3 ethics, and one of them is people care, and one of them is share the surplus. So inherent in permaculture is the notion that the concept, the belief, the ethos that we need to work in concert with other people to share resources, because it's very easy in permaculture to produce more than you need of one thing and have a deficiency in something else because of the circumstances of your site or, all kinds of reasons. So the notion of complete independence and self-sufficiency in permaculture, I think, is a fallacy. And if we look at permaculture as striving for community interdependence and creating robust, resilient networks of connection, local supply chains, and relying on resilient communities instead of complete self-sufficiency, we're going to be stronger for it. And I think we're better able to live out the permaculture ethic of sharing the surplus. Because if I have excess of quince, which I definitely will, that I can't use all of it up, rather than have it go to waste, can I trade with somebody else for something that they have? One example that I like to give is that because I have a 1/4 acre, there's no good way for me to sustainably raise meat besides rabbits. And don't tell me meat birds, because meat chickens, I have some experience with that, and they will just destroy my property here. I can't sustainably pasture raise meat chickens here. But I can support a local farmer 30 miles away who is raising grass-fed, grass-finished cattle that live a happy life. And I can afford to purchase a share every year from him, support another local sustainable person, develop interconnectedness and community bonds. And I can afford to do that because I'm able to sell plants that I grow here, or, write about permaculture for various publications, things like that. And I'm able to have room in my budget because of the amount of other food I'm able to produce for my family here outside of meat. That makes it so that I have resources to buy local, sustainably harvested, sustainably grown products from other people. And that doesn't mean that I am failing as a permaculturist. It means that I'm succeeding because I'm building connections and community interdependence. So when we don't have access to land, for whatever reason, and again, I think we need to stop holding that up as a holy grail of permaculture, having access to 5, 20, 100 acres, because that's not possible for most people. Access to land is a privilege that a lot of us don't have. Fully recognize I have a big plot for Portland. I fully recognize that comes with privilege. That is an element of privilege to be able to afford to live here. That if we are really focused on the fact that not everybody is going to be able to have access to land because we live in an imperfect world, but we want everyone to embrace permaculture, or not everybody wants to have access to land, but they can still be a legitimate permaculturist, we can't be focused on complete self-sufficiency. It won't work. It won't be sustainable for our communities. We still need doctors. We still need artists. We need a huge diversity of skilled professionals. They can't all be farmers, but they can all be permaculturists. And that's part of living in a connected, interdependent permaculture setting that embraces those ethics of people care and sharing the surplus, fair share, right? So if you're thinking about, I have to have access to land or I can't be in permaculture, or you're thinking, if I don't work the land, I can't be a permaculturist, please set those notions aside and realize that you can be a permaculturist, because it's about design and designing your life for sustainability, and that includes community interdependence. And I think that if we're going to look at sustainable food production and sustainable living, we also need to look at the greater issue of access to land, and the people who want to grow their own food, and the people who want to be sustainable producers, and who want to foster resilient living, that need access to land. We need to look at the inequity issues and the barriers to land access, and the barriers to access to design skills. I think that's all super important as we move forward with trying to make permaculture a more mainstream, more approachable, more achievable movement. Because it shouldn't be fringe prepping, it shouldn't be hippie gardening. It's a resilient, workable, sustainable design system for all peoples. And it's really important that we understand the issues with land access, and we understand and work towards solutions for community interdependence and shared access to land, equitable access to land, so that our entire community and all of the communities around the world can fully embrace permaculture. On that note, I'm going to go in because my kids have let me know that my timer is going off and my tortilla dough has rested, and it is time to go cook up the tortillas for lunch. I will be back soon. Hope you all stay well and healthy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and please consider subscribing to my channel. That would be awesome. Thanks.